anyone you know ever been a victim of sexual harassment?
I don't know. I don't think so.
No, I've never been sexually harassed at all.
Yes.
No, but you always hear like stories, but none that I really got to know.
No.
Yes, I do. I also do.
Yeah.
I did know someone like, I guess a year ago, and it happens like twice, and I don't think she did anything about it, which is really bad. Like, you should definitely do something about it.
Yeah, I know people that have. It's wrong.
My cousin, when she was younger, she was sexually harassed by her gym teacher.
I actually was a victim of sexual harassment at my workplace. I actually quit just because people were sexually harassing me. I think they should really speak to the management, which I didn't do, which is a big mistake on my part. And because if they do, those people will get fired, and they won't be able to sexually harass anyone else. And I didn't do that, so that was a mistake on my part.
I also was a victim at my workplace.
I've never been. I'm sure people have in our school, girls have, but they just don't bring it up as a big topic.
I think everyone's just used to it. They don't really get mad, so.
Yes, I think it's very common.
I don't know how common it really is, but I know a few people that it's happened to.
Yeah, very common, especially in high school.
I think like on the beach or like at the mall or like on the streets every day, like someone will like come up to me and just be like, oh, hey, hottie, or like, oh, boricua. And like, it's just like disgusting. And I think people need to have more respect.
Most disrespectful thing ever, I think.
According to a major study by the Education Foundation of the American Association of University Women, 4 in 5 teenagers say they have experienced some form of sexual harassment during their school lives.
65% of girls and 42% of boys surveyed have experienced touching, grabbing, or pinching in a sexual way.
Both boys and girls are victims of sexual harassment, and both can be perpetrators as well.
Sexual harassment can take place almost anywhere a teenager spends time.
At school, at work, at sporting events, or other community activities.
How do we stand up to sexual harassment? That's what we'll be talking about today. Hi everyone, I'm Elias.
And I'm Catherine.
And this is Realfaith TV.
I'm not surprised that many of the teens on the street had personal experiences with sexual harassment.
They found it to be quite common and almost accepted in their school.
We'll talk with them again later in the show and meet our studio guests.
But first, let's meet our spotlight guest, Nicole, who is a victim of sexual harassment.
She'll share with us her story a little later. Right now, she'll tell us about the sexual harassment she's witnessed in her school.
Well, I see it happen at school a lot. We're at the age where sex is a big issue, and a lot of girls get touched the wrong way, and they don't know how to react to it because many teenagers don't know exactly what it is. I define sexual harassment as inappropriate touching or inappropriate sexual innuendos or sexual comments to somebody, and they're not welcoming to it. A lot of the girls at school, at my school, they don't really react to what is done to them because they just think that it's a common thing, and I think that most of them don't want to believe that it's sexual harassment, and they just want to be accepted or liked by many people, and they just laugh it off or go along with it. And I think maybe in high schools especially, or even middle schools, they should have people talk about it or programs, because at that point it happens a lot to younger girls. It could definitely depress them and make them feel very insecure about themselves.
I think sexual harassment at school can make a girl feel very insecure. I know I was in an art class once, and some guy thought it was appropriate to just grab me as I was walking by. And for the rest of the day, I was kind of on edge. It's bothersome.
I can see. Let's meet our studio guests and find out about their experiences with sexual harassment. They are Ian, Kira, Anthony, Lauren, Kristen, and Jen.
What have you witnessed or experienced when it comes to sexual harassment in your school? Do you find it to be common?
Oh, I think it's very common in school. I mean, people don't even realize, I feel like people don't even realize it anymore. It's kind of just people will just tell jokes without even knowing, or they'll just make comments subconsciously, and they just don't even realize that it could be offending people at that time.
Yeah, I mean, you hear a lot of jokes, and like sometimes, like a joke is a joke, but like when you're saying it out in the open, like in front of everybody, instead of like, you know, to somebody in confidence, like you
your
know,
buds.
Yeah, but like when you start saying it in front of people, everybody starts hearing it, and like it's gotten to the point where like nobody really cares anymore, that I see anyway.
Yeah, it's become like a social norm. Like everyone does it, and people get affected by it, but it's so common that they don't feel the need to tell anyone.
Right, in my school, it's gotten to the point where the teachers just don't do anything to stop it anymore. Like the girls were so bad this year. We have a lot of young male teachers, and there was one of them that the girls just became obsessed with him. They always talk about him. He became like the sex symbol of the school. They would take pictures of him, post them on the website. It was crazy, and he embraced it. Like it was totally inappropriate, but he didn't care. He liked it.
Yeah, like at my school once, one of my friends, this teacher was making a lot of like sexual comments to her, and she was and he's been doing it, like he's been known to do that. Like he was on restraint, like he could only coach a boys team. So it was like really scary for her, but she actually went to the principal and was like, I feel uncomfortable being around him. So it was really good to see that someone still thinks that's really inappropriate to like take that kind of talk.
Sexual harassment can be simply defined as unwelcome sexual advances. It can take a variety of forms.
Verbal sexual harassment can include name-calling, comments about the size and shape of a person's body,
telling off-color jokes and stories,
lying and gossiping about sexual behavior, or repeatedly asking someone out who is plainly not interested.
These behaviors are degrading and demeaning.
Visual sexual harassment can include the sending or circulating of obscene notes, pornography, or sex-related objects.
Physical sexual harassment can include touching another person's body or invading another person's personal space, or even their sense of security.
This can take the form of blocking another's path, bumping up against them unnecessarily, or in a suggestive way.
Pinching, grabbing, unwanted kissing, hugging, or any other inappropriate touching.
Our spotlight guest, Nicole, experienced some form of verbal, visual, and physical sexual harassment at her workplace.
Let's hear her story now.
When I was 16 years old, I started working, and one of the managers sexually harassed me. He would ask me things about my personal life and tell me things of sexual orientation and touch me inappropriately, and it really had an effect on me. I asked him to stop a couple of times, but it proceeded, and I guess he just thought that maybe I was joking too. I asked my mom and my sister, was that sexual harassment or not, and they said it was, and to be careful and to watch out and to ignore him. I tried to ignore him as much as possible and make sure that our relationship was strictly work and business and not anything else. And he proceeded to make comments and do other things, and I made sure not to be in his way. But I never got the chance to go to an authority like the other manager or the owners, because he was fired beforehand. A fellow coworker of mine was also sexually harassed. She was really, really upset. She was crying. She didn't know what to do. And I mean, we took notice of it and told her to tell somebody else. So they suspended the worker for 3 days without pay so that he would understand, and if it proceeded, he would be fired.
It was good that Nicole felt comfortable enough to tell her mom and her sister about the harassment, so she was able to identify it.
Yeah, I know. And her friend was successful in reporting the harassment, resulting in serious consequences to the perpetrator.
But for many teenagers, it can be difficult to report sexual harassment.
They may feel embarrassed or afraid that the adult they tell might blame them in some way.
And no teenager wants the reputation of being a tattletale.
It's useful to distinguish between flirting and sexual harassment.
But it's important to take appropriate action whenever you're made to feel uncomfortable.
Many of us have witnessed sexual harassment in our schools. What about at work? Have any of you witnessed or been involved in something like that?
I actually work with Nicole. I used to work with her. I used to be at the same place as her, and I'd see her all the time there. But the girl that she was talking about, actually, the one that reported the incident and got the guy almost fired, I actually saw her at school, and she'd talk to me about it. And she actually had trouble like talking to like her superiors, and had trouble actually telling, because she'd go to me and she told me what happened. I'd be like, dude, well, did you tell anybody? She goes, no, I don't. I feel bad for the guy. I don't want him to get fired. And I looked at her. I was like, what, are you out of your mind? You got to tell somebody about this. And I would see Nicole there, and there would be a lot of things that would go around, and you'd see it all the time at work. You know, just even if it's not anything major, you'd see like, you know, you see comments being made, you see people whistling. So you know, it's all over the place at work.
Sometimes at work, like, you know, after answering a question, a guy will like just keep his hand on my shoulder just a little bit too long, like too long for comfort. I'm like shrugging it off by the time he walks away.
I actually work at a pool, so there's a lot of people in bathing suits all the time. So you'll hear a lot of comments thrown around very loosely, and just kind of, it's dropped really easily.
When I used to work at Starbucks, I remember it was like my second or third day, and I was on the register, and these 3 guys come up, and I was like, oh, what can I get you? And the guy will I'll take a tall cup of you, and I was just like,
yeah.
First I laughed at how corny his like sexual innuendo was, and then the assistant manager ran over to me and was just like, you're not welcome here, to the guy, and then to me she was like, I'm sorry, this really doesn't happen. So that, I guess, you know, that was nice because they took it as something out of the ordinary.
Yeah, that actually is pretty sweet that your manager, you know, stood up for you and, you know, defended you on that.
Yeah. Victims of sexual harassment may feel humiliated or even dirty.
Physical reactions are not unusual.
These include nightmares, loss of sleep and or appetite, stomach aches, headaches, and generally avoiding the touch of others.
Next, Nicole will tell us how the sexual harassment affected her.
I didn't really have any physical symptoms, but I was a little depressed and a little anxious and nervous around him, and other co-workers of mine saw what he was doing and they would kind of make jokes about it to me, and I'd laugh with them, but it wasn't what I really wanted. It definitely made me feel less of a person. I felt alone because I felt that maybe I was the only one who was being harassed, and I felt disrespected, and I felt like I didn't have a heart and I didn't have a brain. I felt ashamed, and that I was just there for him to treat me inappropriately, and he didn't want to get to know my personality as a worker, and he just wanted to, you know, treat me disrespectfully. I was a little apprehensive to tell other girls my age because I didn't know how they would react to it, and I didn't know if they would think less of me as a person because it was happening to me, but I realized that it wasn't my fault and I couldn't take the blame for it.
It is so important not to blame yourself.
And to get counseling if it's necessary.
Let's go back to the teens on the street and find out if they have any advice to offer victims of sexual harassment.
What advice do you give a teenager who has been sexually harassed?
Just tell them to stick up for themselves, and they shouldn't be able to take that because nobody deserves to be like treated like that.
I would just tell them to stand up for themselves.
Shouldn't try to hide it.
Tell somebody who can do something about it if you can't.
Tell your mom about it.
She'll fix it. She'll fix it.
Tell somebody. Definitely, because if you don't, then they're just gonna keep on doing it to you.
Don't keep it inside. You have to tell people about it, you know? So like, cause like if somebody does it and they don't get in trouble for it, then they're just gonna keep doing it.
Stay strong.
Get some help and don't blame yourself. I'm not one to give advice, but I just like listen to them and stuff.
Yeah, as long as you just listen, that goes a long way. Go to the cops. Sue. Do whatever you have to do.
Well, I think they should bring it to their parents first. Then if it's very serious, then bring it to the law. Talk to somebody maybe.
Go to like a teacher or the police, or your parents, because it's not right to do something like that.
They need to come out with it and try to get the help that they can.
Yeah, you definitely need to tell someone. Tell like your boss or someone.
You don't think you need help, just go like just to talk to someone, because just having someone there to like know that you can talk to, and just like having that like as a safe home, like it makes you feel so much better, and like it really helps out a lot.
So what other advice do you guys have for victims of sexual harassment?
Well, I think that kids at Seaside, they really made some good points. Like, you know, you gotta tell somebody about it. It's just not gonna go away if you keep it to yourself, and you just laugh at like when somebody does something inappropriate. You can't just laugh and say, oh, ha ha ha, enough. It's not gonna work. You have to tell somebody about it.
Yeah, don't take it. You need to tell, obviously what you just said, you need to tell someone, otherwise it's not going to stop. You can't stop it by joking around, because then that doesn't deliver the right message to the person.
Also, let's say like it didn't happen to you, but your friend, you should be there for your friend, make sure they get the help that they need. Like, don't just turn them off. You should really be there for them, listen to them.
And also you have to respond right away too. So like if somebody does something to you, you don't just like, you don't stand up for yourself, then you have to do it right away. Like you have to show them that it's not appropriate. Like you got to say, hey, like right off the bat,
I just feel like you can't blame yourself.
Yeah.
You have so much self-worth. You just people have to remember that and know that it's a strange problem, this sexual harassment, but you're not at fault whatsoever.
Yeah, and it's sad. I've seen situations where girls have been sexually harassed and instead of just standing up for it right away, they kind of look at it, well, at least I'm getting attention.
Yeah.
And even though it's bad, like they put up with it. And like you said, they have to realize they're worth so much more than that, and that's definitely not the kind of attention that they want to be getting. And something that might start out as something not too bad can get a lot worse.
And also, when you're going to tell someone, you can't be nervous, because from personal experience, I know that when at our school there was a huge problem, so I went to tell the principal and the detective that he was sitting with, and I was like shaking and getting really upset. But you have to just push through all of the emotions that go along with this, because in the end you're gonna feel a lot better and a lot safer.
I totally agree. I've never been part of like a big case that was documented, but like you go to parties or just like hangouts, and sometimes the guys just get a little overly friendly with you. They just start touching you, and you just don't, you don't want it. And it's hard sometimes to say no, because sometimes they're your friends, and you don't want to sound mean. You still want to be friends with them, but you can't be afraid just to draw the line, because you have to, or else it'll get bigger.
Yeah, and from a guy's perspective, it's also important to know, because like Lauren said, sometimes it's hard for a girl to say no, and sometimes it's hard for a guy to understand what a girl means when she says no, because you have to be, like, girls have to be a little more clear about it, like look them dead in the eye and say no, instead of be like, because it really is kind of hard sometimes for guys to understand what girls are really trying to say.
And at the same time, though, you have to understand sometimes, especially in this, today, guys are usually pressured, to do stuff with their girlfriend. Like they need to become sexually active in high school, and it's kind of like pushing it. So then that's kind of where the guys are pressured to pressure the girls, and it's just like this chain reaction that doesn't stop.
Mm-hmm. That's true, and it's become so common that I know a lot of girls that seem to have a problem saying no in any aspect. If we could all just take a second and remember that we're worth just so much more than just giving in to that kind of sexual harassment.
It takes a lot of, willpower, and just like Anthony was saying before, it's hard to say no sometimes, and Jen said that too. I mean, but sometimes you also have to understand that there is a line that you can't cross, and sometimes when people cross that line, that's when Kira circumstances come up, and it gets a huge mess.
Participating in sexual harassment is wrong. It is contrary to Jesus' teachings about the way we should treat others.
It's disrespectful to the dignity of every human person and causes scandal.
Let's go back to the teens on the street and find out what their faith teaches them about this topic.
And how they think someone's faith can be helpful when they've been a victim of sexual harassment.
What does your faith teach you about sexual harassment?
That you should have enough self-respect not to let anybody do that to you.
That you shouldn't do it.
The Christian faith talks about forgiveness, so it can make it easier to cope with it.
Well, hopefully they be able to forgive. That's something you can't forget.
Right.
But hopefully be able to forgive and not take matters into their own hands.
It creates, a feeling that you have someone there with you, God or Jesus or whoever it is for the individual, which is a beautiful thing.
Just someone to lean back on, have your hope in.
Well, I think they'll be able to talk to God about it, and then that'll help them through it.
They can look to people in their faith or religion for help and advice.
It was me being sexually harassed, just to know that, I have this hope, faith that I'm not alone, you know what I mean? Like a friend that's there, somebody they can talk to when there's really nobody to talk to.
Nicole has some advice for victims of sexual harassment.
She also shares with us how God helped her to get through the difficult period when she was being sexually harassed.
Ask the person to stop, and if they proceed or if they make it more aggressive or anything like that, then you definitely can go to the police or go to a parent or a teacher or an adult or your bosses at work or somebody and tell them, because they will definitely do something about it. If you keep it secret for too long, it could harm you more than it can help you. And a person who's being sexually harassed should not feel embarrassed and think that it's their fault, because it's definitely not their fault. They had nothing to do with it, they're just a victim of it. My relationship with God helped me to understand myself better and be okay with myself and not feel that I'm less of a person because of what this man did to me. And it helped me to become closer with God by praying to him and asking for his help and praying for other girls who are in the same situation and to help them and to help other girls who do get sexually harassed to understand and respect themselves.
So what does the Catholic faith teach us about why sexual harassment is wrong?
And how can victims find strength in their faith?
I think that the golden rule might be the best example of this, because I wouldn't want to be sexually harassed, so I wouldn't sexually harass anyone else either. I really think that's the basis for everything.
Yeah, and you gotta, sometimes, you know, you watch what you say to people, and it's basically, yeah, it's like she said, you know, you gotta think of what other people would want, and like, it's not like you would sexually harass somebody else. You could do it and not even notice it. Like you could say, like you could tell a joke, you could say something that's inappropriate that you don't even know. So you gotta constantly keep other people's feelings in mind.
Yeah, and our Catholic faith really changes the way you look at a person. I mean, in our faith, we're taught that everyone is a precious child of God, created in his image and likeness. And when you see someone that way and you really try to see Christ living in that person, you don't want to hurt them. You don't want to do anything that would disrespect this precious body. And like, you see the body as something sacred. It says in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, it says, your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have received from God. And just when you look at someone in that light, you're not going to want to say a dirty joke to them. You're not going to want to touch them inappropriately because you just realize that this person has immeasurable value. So just when you look at people in the light of your Catholic faith, it changes things.
That's exactly what I was thinking, that, you know, your body is a temple, and not only do you have to respect them, your body, but like everybody else, and so you shouldn't do anything that would harm them.
Yeah, you should, and also, like, as a Catholic, you're taught to forgive. So you always want to forgive the person and be open to, like, maybe there's something else that's triggering this, like the way they're treating you. So you always just want to be open to forgiving, like, whatever hurt you.
And I think it's important to also pray for the person too, because they need help, obviously, if they're provoked to do this. So I think it's important to pray for them as well.
It's also important to pray for the victim of the sexual harassment, because obviously they're going through a very hard time, and pray that they can find the strength in themselves and in God, that they can get through it.
Right, and if you are the victim, it's important for you to maybe turn to church or your youth group or a counselor and to pray for the courage and strength to understand what happened to you and that's not your fault, and just to, you know, forgive and get over it.
Yeah, and it's really beautiful. I've seen the situations where friends of mine, through retreats and through joining a youth group, it's really given them the support and the courage they need to just to deal with the experience, to stand up for themselves, but then also to forgive the person who hurt them and to heal from that situation. So it's really, really important to get within a community, whether it's your youth group, just your family, a group of people who just really love Jesus and can support you through this and just help you deal with the whole situation.
Also, it's important to go to pray in a place where you're comfortable, because like, you're going through such a tough time that you just want to be in a comfort zone at that time. Like, you don't want to feel awkward in church, or if like in a youth group, if you have to say it out loud, that could be awkward. But even if it's in your own room, if that's where you feel most comfortable, that's where you should try and communicate with God, like to tell him that what you're feeling and how to pray for strength to get through it.
I would really recommend trying to find like a youth mass, because I think that would put you in the place with other teenagers who just are there to care about each other. I think it's a place where if you're feeling insecure or alone, you can probably find a lot of just comfort in those around you.
And as Kira was saying before, so like she said, spiritually get away through prayer or whatever, but I mean, sometimes it helps to also physically go away. Like if you're at a job, you know, just take off for 2 or 3 days, just kind of sit back and reflect and still be in the public eye, but not, you know, concentrated in where all this struggle is coming from, you know. All Christians are called to cultivate the virtues of chastity, purity, and modesty.
Sexually harassing behaviors treat a person as an object.
They make a mockery of the gift of our sexuality and violate the intimate center of a person, which modesty protects.
Sexual harassment removes sex from its proper place of intimacy and relationship. It uses it purposefully for self-gratification.
To tease or torment another person or subject another to public embarrassment.
What's more, if it's left unchecked, sexual harassment escalates in severity. It achieves a kind of acceptance as normal behavior in society.
For more resources on sexual harassment, go to our website and click on this show to find links to the topic.
The address is www.realfaithtv.com.
Or you could call us at 609-406-7402.
We leave you with this final thought.
As Christians, we are called to stand in solidarity with all those whose dignity has been violated.
We are responsible to do something about persons, circumstances, and societal attitudes that allow sexual harassment to continue.
So don't be afraid to stand up against sexual harassment.
Thanks for watching.
We'll see you next time on
Realfaith TV. God bless.
Well, she stands for safe, healthy, and empowered. And I wrote it with Linda because I wanted the book to be able to appeal to broad range of ages, you know, like everything from 18 to 35 to 40, you know. And I think the topics that we discuss, the 9 issues that we discuss in the book, are really relevant to those that age group. And it's really looking at like things that people today, women, are really wrestling with and are causing a lot of pressure, you know, inside. And it's like cultural issues, you know, like beauty. Our culture is so obsessed with outer beauty, to boundaries. We're often doing so much, you know, too much, and we're overwhelmed, you know, and just looking at these and going, well, what are the lies that our culture has fed us, and then what are the truths from the Bible that can help us in these areas, because the Bible is so completely relevant to what we're going through today. We, in our journeys, have discovered a few things, and in just meeting women around the world, and we've gone to the Bible for those answers and tried to present them succinctly in the book.